Sorry.
Right. Hi everyone. Welcome to the finals of APU Philosophy Challenge 2018. We'd like to congratulate all teams for making it this far. What else is there? Right. In opening government, we have IIUM. In opening opposition, we have IIUM. In closing government, we have Ganjabis. And in closing opposition, we have Locke. Alright. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Please keep your phones on silent, cheering, booing to the minimum. Without further ado, can we call upon the Prime Minister? Here.
At the end of this debate, this will either get very complicated or I think it's very simple. I think life...
I couldn't hear you. I couldn't hear you.
Oh.
Charisma, bro. Charisma.
This... I am charisma.
Talk about drip irrigation.
Huh? Okay. Nope.
Guys. Life is good.
The stage was bigger though. I'm good.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be a very rich debate if everyone concedes that the construct of life is different from the event of life. Events are different. This debate is about the construct that we have created around that event. An event that should have just been value neutral. But all these things we do every day, starting from me standing on the stage to Behrat, you going back to a shitty job tomorrow because of the pursuit of construct of life. And most people, by the way. So what is glorification of life? I think glorification of life can be a lot of things, but at least it's three first principles that applies. A, glorification of life by definition has to be a pursuit of defending the construct that you created around that glorification. So everyone wants to protect their version of it. Secondly, glorification of life also has to entail more of it. So it has to mean more nominal amount of it. This is why everyone wants to have children. But also it has to mean being able to fight with other constructs, fight with other people to make your version of life more significant and more acceptable. But thirdly, and this is important, and this will become clear in arguments, but glorification of life also entails what some guy thousands of years ago figured out, which is movement, change, speed. Life cannot be static, and that's why your construct of life has to constantly keep changing. And I think that is the source of pain. I mean, that guy was Gautam Buddha, of course. So basically, there's three arguments in this debate that comes from that. The first is intrinsic worth of life. When you evaluate it, itself is meaningless. So the glorification doesn't make any sense. Secondly, it's the process of glorification that magnifies the quantum of suffering, so it's not worth it. But thirdly, it's the process of glorification that leads to all of the consequent harms, such as hierarchies, etc., which is why it is not worth it. Firstly, why is life not worth it intrinsically? Three reasons why. Firstly, life is a coincidence, and it's not just talk argument of everyone was born without consent, but more importantly, it's the fact that you don't know where you started from. You never know what your position was. There are so many structures around you that really determines how your life will turn out. So even if life is glorified, the fact that at the end of the life you do not have much control over where you are going to be is what makes life intrinsically not worth it. Because no matter how hard you try, the law of average dictates that most people will never come out on the winning side of the construct of life, whichever construct you subscribe to, like the debater construct, the religious construct, the society's construct, the nationalistic construct. That's structural. B, because in life there's a lot of variables that you have to deal with, so it's like having to fight all every day. And simply put, the number of constructs that is internal to yourself versus the number of variables that are external, i.e. things you cannot control, are just significantly greater. It means no matter how hard you try, Mubarak, you will never be able to control your destiny, because there's just greater number of things that are uncontrolled by you that will determine where you go. So life itself as a process is not worth it, and definitely as a construct only magnifies all of the bad things about it. But finally, here's the thing. Let's say you got somewhere. In 100 years, what is all this worth? It's worth nothing. In 1,000 years, everything my generation will do will be worth nothing. And the truism of death means it's determined that life itself is not worth glorifying. It means even if you get XYZ, the fact that you have glorified life leads to nothingness, because if you take life as a linear constant and in insufficient amount of time, life will simply not be worth anything. Yes, sir.
Yes, we don't know where we came from, and yes, we don't know where we are going. But now that we are here, don't you think the glorification of life creates better outcomes than not glorifying life, since we're already here?
Not really, because you're going to define outcomes and most people will not be able to meet that outcome. That's why structurally it's not a good idea. But my second and third argument deals with the second part of that. Suffering is constant. And here's the thing, a guy sat down under a tree 4,000 years ago and said this. And so many guys follows him because it's true. Because the problem with the glorification of life is your meaning is derived no longer from yourself or from your choices, rather from your subscription to those concepts through which lives were glorified and your degree of success to it. That means the meaning of life that you could have given to yourself through freedom is no longer there because of this concept of glorification of life. But secondly, that is exactly why so many people serve their life in service of some kind of construct, right? So for some people, it is going to be capitalism. For some people, it is going to be their priest. For some people, it is going to be their religion. For some people, it is going to be white nationalism, by the way. So for every good example of like this is what people did to pursuit of glorification of life, you have more number of examples on the other side where some racist bigot also subscribed to glorification of life and did a greater number of bad things. But thirdly, this is where power dynamics start becoming more important, because that's where it becomes a fight of that. Here's the thing. Both sides are using this concept of glorification and they're trying to constantly move you. They're trying to take you off your seat and make you do things. To what end? More often than not, it's towards you taking more ownership over things. It's over you producing more children. It's over you trying to become bigger and more successful. But secondly, this means that the group that has more power, here's the thing, even if you have achieved your glorified version of life, you're still not happy, because then you want to be Oprah. You want to go and preach it. You want more and more people to subscribe to it. And this is why movement is an important argument in this debate, because the process of glorification of life entails that even if you have achieved your like idealistic form of what a meaningful life is, you're still not happy, because glorification of life entails that you do all these other things. Even if you're above average, life is meaningless more because of the glorification of life. But finally, what are the alternatives going to be in a world therefore where these hierarchies do not exist, and the need to galvanize around these definitions and these like constant improvement and these vague concepts don't exist? I think it's very simple. You don't have to glorify life. Life is just another event. You can glorify whatever you want. You can subscribe to nothingness. You can subscribe to the pursuit of things that you do not really understand. You're more willing to say, I don't really know what the meaning of existence is. And that's fine, because I can pursue the next meaningful thing right in front of me. I can pursue death because I think that is the most meaningful form of pursuit. I can pursue the creation of definition of pursuit as opposed to this construct of glorification of life, which even if idealistically no amount of power, like there's always going to be power struggle and someone is going to control. But even if no one controls it, you are going to lock yourself in that prison. Suffering comes from the fact that you always want more. Suffering comes from the fact you always want to control things. But the world, more often than not, is beyond your control. More often than not, is beyond your determination. That is the alternative without glorification of life. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for that speech. Can we now call upon the leader of the opposition? Here.
Oh, okay. Wait, I'm sorry. Oh, how do you wear this thing? Okay. This is really weird, man. I don't think it works on hijabis. Wait, I'm not starting yet, okay. Wait. Just about 20 minutes ago, I got my fingers jammed in the door. It was extremely painful and probably the most painful thing I have ever gone through in my life up to now. But I still managed to come up here and give the final speech, even though I don't have much of a structure, and I'm going to try to do that. Before I start my speech, I have a couple of rebuttals towards what Shitab says. I know him personally, and I think he's quite depressing. What did he tell you? He tell you, firstly, life sucks, and secondly, there's always going to be different constructs you need to go through, and you're always going to be in pursuit of all of those things, right? We think it doesn't necessarily to be true. Firstly, life doesn't suck. At least for most of people, it doesn't. And even for those who does feel life suck, there's a lot of things we can do for them to feel like they're able to achieve a lot of great things in life that makes them happy. And we think those things are meaningful. And secondly, he talks about different contrasts, right? We think even though pain is like continuous and it always going to be like different things that you have to constrict yourself into, it doesn't matter. You have the ability to actually go out there and to go out of the structure you were born with and to do different things, to achieve different things. What matters most is that you achieve something in life and that it makes you happy. We think that's most important. What do we think glorification is? We think glorification in light of life means like we glorify life as is something that values, that we actually cherish it. Because we think life are worth all of the struggles we've gone through. Therefore, we fight at our utmost to actually achieve things in life, or even if it's the smallest things we have in life, we still do so because we think it's worth it. I have two arguments. Firstly, why glorification of life is most important in overcoming the struggles in life. And secondly, without glorification, the alternative is the bleak of future. I have several substantives before. No, sit down. So firstly, why it's most important in overcoming the problems in life, right? We think because you treasure life, that means oftentimes You will do whatever it takes to become a better person, to gain more knowledge, to overcome all of the struggles you and your community suffers. Like this means that you actually do things to make your own life better. That means the glorification of life gives meaning of all of the movements that you're trying to do, gives meaning, gives you the sort of support and energy for you to fight against. That means once you met any sort of struggles later, any struggles or any types of like frustrating things that happen in your life, you still overcoming those things and you still trying to make it better. It means that you have the determination to get things done. That you have, like, if you're a woman, it means that you're able to stand up in the podium and say things and say the struggles that you're going through. It means you're an African American or a Muslim, minority Muslim that comes from China, like me. I would do all those things to my community in order to make our lives better. And secondly, what would an alternative be looking like without the glorification of life, right? I think I will take you later. We think the alternative is a very bleak outlook of life. Why do we say that? Because the meaning, the value we give for life means that it stops you from having depression. Yes, every now and then it's going to be depressing and painful things that you're going to suffer, but it also means all of the negative things and all of the negative power through those things. And for the people who are depressed, extremely depressed, for them, you're able to tell them that, no, you can get through things. There's so many good things that are going on in your life. It's going to be a positive society instead of a negative one. We think those are the things that means that you're able to power through your depression. You're able to actually make something out of yourself. And even the most suffering, probably, Shita, you feel like your life pretty sucks. But even like, we're here to support you. Your family probably loves you. I'm not entirely sure. But all of the things are worth for you to love, worth for you to live in society. And that means it gives meaning to your life. We therefore feel like the glorification is what allows us to create support structure for the depressed, like Shitab's family does for him. And also it means that what sort of like support structure? It means that your family always being there for you, no matter, because let's face it, life not just gonna end unless you choose to end. At that chance, I have nothing to say, but it means you being there, your family is going to always support for you. And that also means that you're going to have support structure for poor people as well, because them being denied of living the fullest of their life, that means it's going to be more sympathy towards them, for them to actually having a better life for themselves, and then they themselves to make a better life for themselves. And B, death means, in contrast of the meaning of life, that means death have value upon it. What does it look like? It means that when we value life, we value death as well. We value the things that we value the people who dies in war. We value the Syrian children that got flushed on the beach. We think those are the very things that we cherish life for. Otherwise, it's going to be extremely it's going to desensitize people to actually see them as something compatible, to actually care for them. And thirdly, we think it's more likely for us to create a counter narrative of current narrative that society tells you what to do, right? Just like what you said, Shita, that it's going to be always construct that you have to live for in life. But we think it means that when you cherish life, you're going to be like, oh, there are better things because I cherish this period of time that I actually live here. That means there are better things I want to do instead of just working here, instead of just contributing myself to communism or capitalism. I have better things to do for my life. This makes me happy. I will do this. This means someone like me, growing up in a communist country, I'm able to talk, having a discussion here to debate about the meaning of life. All of those things are what makes me can actually overcome all of the struggles and constructs in my life, that I'm able to actually stand here and talk about these issues. But it's very important to recognize that only with the glorifications of life, it makes your own, all of the things you go through meaningful, and it doesn't suck. Even though you have different construction in life, you still can achieve something that is outside of your box. That also means that you have a counter narrative of doing so. If you are, let's look at the comparative. If you are able to actually, if you do value your life, you wouldn't constrict yourself in those boxes, because you will actually make yourself out there to accomplish great things in life, to give a debate, to talk about the things that you want to talk about. We think all of those things are because a result of the glorification of life. Therefore, we think it's extremely important for us to cherish those things. And I do not believe the opening opposition's case. We're proud to propose. Thank you very much.
Can the leader of the opposition to the speech? Can we now invite the Deputy Prime Minister?
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
yeah.
How do you wear it? How do you wear it? Oh, okay. All right. Is it live stream? Okay, sure. Can I retract consent?
So I'm
Is this how it's done?
Over your ears.
I'll do it.
What?
It's fine. It's okay. It's fine. Yeah.
Better? Okay. Ta-da. If it's okay with you guys, I'd really like to not come with him. Three things I want to talk about. First, what does glorification look like? Because opening government suggests that glorification construction is constructs of life are imposed in the opposition world. I think that's a bit ludicrous because the absence of glorification of life does not mean that entities who try to construct how life should be lived go away. They just construct it differently. Religions still say, life is man, that's the glorification, that's the lack of glorification. But they still construct how you should live your life. So it's still externally imposed in government's world. So I think that's like, Second, in terms of in terms of people wanting to defend their own versions of it and like conflicting with each other, the same applies. People still feel attached to the constructs they have created of themselves in terms of how that life should be lived, even if they have a slightly more pessimistic outlook on it. So people still would like to defend those outlooks and constructs. So I think those are not relevant to this debate. Third, in terms of like what this glorification look like, no thank you. I would suggest that there's a few things that you must understand in terms of like thinking of what glorification of life looks like. One, obviously, this glorification narrative probably looks like something saying like life is worth the struggle, like it's worth living. But also, when people ask why is life worth living, that glorification comes with a lot of sub-narratives attached to it. What do these narratives look like? These narratives look like answering the question, why is life worth living? And those are the attached narratives that we live with currently. For example, saying things like, because giving is great, because human bonds are worth the effort. And all of those are parts of the reasons used to justify the narrative that life is great. So all of these sub-narratives attached, God would also have to be willing to let go, because the overarching glorification of life comes with the sub-attached narratives that I just talked about. Like how life, so therefore that is important in terms of how life is meant to be lived. That also comes with things such as follow your passion, for example, because life is supposed to be lived gloriously. So I think all of those narratives are very much instrumental in making people live happy lives. Now, no thank you. I would also just like to quickly point out before this becomes an issue, because Amrit's there and she likes people dying, is that like people will continue to have children, right? Because religious obligations, because progeny is important to people, because coaching is something and mentoring other things is something that inherently makes us satisfied. So people like to have children. People like to see little versions of themselves that's cute to them. But also evolutionary instincts means that we are likely to want to have children. Those things don't change as a result of one glorification or one narrative changing. I think that's not part of this debate. No, thank you. What is important though, is if you look at what happens if you don't glorify. Because understand, we don't have to disagree with opening government. They may be correct, maybe they are, in terms of saying we don't agree. But if they are correct, that scientifically speaking, life is not worth living, that does not change the fact that the glorification should exist. Why? Because the moment you know the outlook on life is not great, that life is not worth living, that's the moment you become depressed. Sometimes ignorance is bliss. The father of antinatalism, David Benatar, has actively stopped his work from being published in mainstream media because he realizes when people are exposed to his work, they start having negative outlooks on life and become more likely to be depressed. That's problematic because it is better for us that people don't realize that life is not worth living, even if it is true, than to be exposed. And this glorification that continuously tells them that, hey, what you're going through is actually making you happy. And constructing that happiness for them, even if it was not meant to be, is good because that stops them from entering depression in the first place. No, thank you. Second, when they do enter, even if they do enter depression, this glorification allows us to create the support structures for those individuals because life is supposed to be treasured, and anyone who is at risk of losing it can then seek counseling. And those are things society is more likely to be able to encourage in our world where life is treasured for those individuals. I think that's pretty damaging for that side. Of course, the response is, oh, but if I want to choose death, let me just choose death. I think that does not understand the process people have to go through until the point where they're so broken down that they want to kill themselves. The debate is about preventing people from having to go through that suffering that allows them to reach that stage where they're so unhappy that they feel like maybe death is better. And if glorification helps us make less people go to that extent of suffering where they have to make that option for themselves, that's better for us. We'd rather prevent than just tell depressed people it's okay to kill yourself. We'd rather prevent people from getting there and create support structures for them. No, thank you. The second part of this sub-narrative then is how disenfranchised people go on. Like, it's okay to say, oh, like, let's just quit, let's not follow this law degree. But think of what kind of impact it has on the disenfranchised communities who have to face the biggest obstacles ever created in order for their enfranchisement to happen. Think of the people who had to fight systems of slavery and had to abolish it. Think of all of those women trying to even fight anti-marital rape laws in those countries or fighting for the vote. Those people were up against unimaginable odds. For them to think that the struggle is worth it is exactly what allows enfranchisement of communities to happen. Without these little bits of motivation that says the struggle of this life is worth it so I can do something because life can be glorious, is exactly what allows us to enfranchise people. But it also allows us to create support structures for those exact disenfranchised people, because we can say if their life isn't great, then the narrative is no longer true. That if in order to make life great, we must create support structures for them as well. So if life is meant to be great, and that's the overwhelming narrative in our debate, that means we create those support structures for those individuals. This is also why workplace exploitation, for example, is something we continuously fight, because we're supposed to have life. We're supposed to live our life, be on vacation. All of those kinds of things only happens in a world where people agree that life is supposed to be lived that way. But also, saying that we must be able to live our life is a very strong counter-narrative to the conformism that exists in society now. So all the constructs that opening government talks about is fought much better in opening opposition's world, because we say you must be able to live your life, follow your passion, because that's the sub-narrative of saying why life is great and why life is glorious, right? It is, in this instance, people are empowered to say no, because a narrative that suggests that it's okay to live the life I want allows you to opt out of some of the conformists and the constructs of society onto you. So like following your degree or whatever you want. But finally, I would like to say that opening government keeps on saying we're never happy in the long run, but continuously saying that the little bits of things that you do in your life, such as forming your human bonds, all of those little things can make you happy because life is worth living, is what makes us happy on a continuous basis, even if our life is mundane. That never happens in opening government's world, who have a continuous bleak and pessimistic outlook on life because life is not worth living. I don't want to live in that world. I want a world where I'm just living in ignorance is bliss.
Hello. member of the government for that speech. We now call upon the member of the opposition.
Right. It's right. It's that night. Saturday. Saturday.
Can you guys hear me? Yeah? Is that a yes? Okay, pause my phone. Pause it. Just pause it. Worldview of the government team. I will tell you, and after my speech, I promise you, I will convince you that life is beautiful. I will convince you that life is worth living, and I will convince you that to glorify life, ladies and gentlemen, is to be human and is to exist. The first thing I want to talk about in my speech, all rebuttals will be integrated, is about life and why it is more desirable. Now let's take them at their best case scenario. Let's compare life to non-existence, or life and death. Why is life, and I'm going to draw on the works of some of the empiricists like Hume and the rationalists like Kant and prove to you why this is true. The first thing is, ladies and gentlemen, is because life is empirical, because we can experience life. No matter how you try to interpret the experiences around you, it is objective and it is measurable, and we can quantify it. We can feel pain, we can feel suffering, we can feel happiness, but we can feel. What is non-existence? What lies after death? We do not know. Perhaps death is the most painful and horrendous process we might ever be able to suffer. Perhaps hell really does exist and we're all going there after we die. Perhaps non-existence is painful as your body and your atoms and subatomic particles and quarks just get ripped apart from your system. We do not know this. Better the devil we know than the devil we do not. Life is philosophically and mathematically more desirable than non-existence, ladies and gentlemen. That is the first thing. Second, life is special because it is so precious. Mathematically, it is so precious. We live in a universe, ladies and gentlemen. Let's just all take a minute here. We live in a universe that's over 700 billion years old. A universe that is constantly expanding with hundreds and thousands of galaxies. Ever since we sent out the first probes into the deep space, ladies and gentlemen, we have not found another planet that has carried life. And life exists everywhere on our planet. Microorganisms just sprout out from absolutely nowhere. And life is beautiful, and there's so many things about the world that we do not understand. There are planets we have not discovered. We do not truly understand the laws of physics. The theory of everything has not been found. We're still trying to disprove Einstein and find out new laws and work out gravity and figure out how things work. It is beautiful because there's so much of it, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to look at life and say, oh, I'm going to get old and I'm going to be, people are going to die, great. Well, I choose to look at it some other way. I think life is vast and it's something that we can experience, and I would like that. That is why life is more desirable. Now let me talk about suffering. They tell you that life is horrible because it's full of suffering, because it's depressing. Okay, I'm going to go out on a whim here and say, ladies and gentlemen, that suffering is largely temporary. Depression is like a virus inside you. It flares up every once in a while, and everyone who has ever lived with depression will know this, that it's really all just about getting through that couple of days, getting through that week. And depression will never truly go away. It stays with you for the rest of your life. It flares up sometimes, and sometimes it pushes you to the edge, quite literally. But it's really all about facing it. Suffering, ladies and gentlemen, is a byproduct of external factors outside of our consciousness. We feel bodily pain. We feel anxiety over life's choices. Perhaps we've ended a relationship with someone we love. Perhaps we've lost a dear loved one. Perhaps we feel lonely. But why, and when our instinct for self-preservation clashes with this physical pain, we are depressed. But why can we fight this? Let's draw on the work of the existentialist Jean-Paul Sartre. Sartre tells us that truly we are free, that we can choose what we want to make of life, but we must live life in good faith. When we choose to be depressed, when we choose to allow these external factors, things that are outside of control, to consume us, we are living in bad faith. We are not truly free. If we want to be free and fulfill human potential, we must, ladies and gentlemen, live in good faith. We must live freely and make choices to as according to our free will as much as possible. Amrit tells you, no, 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 no. Life gets worse as we go on. As we age and we find out that we're aging and death gets closer, that's a bad thing. But okay, if that is true, what narrative should we live with? What narrative is more desirable? Do we look at life from the pessimistic, fatalistic side of the government team? Wouldn't life be horrible? Like, we're going to be 60 and you think, what's the point of spending time with my grandchildren? What's the point of going to my job? What's the point of this? What's the point of that? Yes, but like I said just now, life must be more desirable because it is mathematically more desirable. So my point is this: given that this is suffering, we think that this is the more preferable narrative. It's more preferable to live life with curiosity, with optimism, rather than fatalism. But why? Why is suffering still something we should live with? Because suffering gives happiness weight, ladies and gentlemen. We feel great happiness, especially if you have depression. Those days when sometimes you go on a date, you fall in love, or you meet your mom, or you watch a great film, or you spend some time, and you laugh really loud. Those moments become extra special because we've felt so much pain before. And only suffering can give happiness meaning. We only feel when we're high after we smoke a joint because we've been sober. And we can only feel happy, ladies and gentlemen, after we have suffered. Yes, Amber?
Smoke a joint all you want. As you become older and life becomes less and less you because you are dying every single day. Can you tell me what the remedy to that suffering is?
There is no remedy. Everybody will die. Like, you are literally expecting me to find the holy grail, the cure, like, to live to infinity. That's never going to happen. But it's about the narrative, Amrit. How can you live life just... Never mind. I'm sorry, okay, last thing. I also want to say that she said, right, oh, people who smoke, people who drink, we're all always trying to kill ourselves slowly. No, it's not the same. It's not the same, okay? Getting high is fun. Getting drunk, with Shafiq especially, is fun. Cigarettes are nice after a meal. It's not the same as trying to literally kill yourself. Lifestyle choices are not the same. Of course, we make the determination, right? Some people like to ride roller coasters. Some people like to go bungee jumping. Yeah, it's thrill-seeking, but it's not the same as actively attempting to kill yourself. And why is this glorification important, ladies and gentlemen? Because it allows us, as our opening rightly pointed out, it allows us to help people. When we see one of our friends post a Facebook post and they're in pain and they're suffering and they're calling out for help, the reason we comment them or send them a message is because we glorify life. The reason when we see a friend having a panic attack, we help them out, we take them to the hospital because we care about life. We help children in Africa, we give to charity, we intervene in wars because we care about life. Our basis, our fundamental premise of human ethics is the sanctity of life. Ladies and gentlemen, the endless words of Monty Python, always, always look on the bright side of life. Thank you.
Sorry? No. I'm starting with some other joke. Actually, I'm not starting with the joke. My speech is too sad.
given a speech. So through the debate as a whole, can we invite the opposition leader?
Like an alien.
Yeah.
Can everyone hear me? Can you hear me clearly? Can you hear me clearly? Okay, can I use the microphone? Thank you, Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen. In my speech, I will have points. I will have rebuttals. I will have analysis. I will have comparatives. I will have all the things that are trending now in the debate world, ladies and gentlemen, and my structure will speak louder than my words. First of all, let's talk about the argument that came from the speaker before me on we don't know what's really going on. It could be 50-50, ladies and gentlemen. Rafiq clearly and spectacularly told you in his speech that life is empirical, ladies and gentlemen. Life can be measured, life can be quantified with your feelings, with what you go through in everyday life. You can't come here and say there is a probability that non-existence is better, ladies and gentlemen, when no one that has gone there has came back and told you what it is like, ladies and gentlemen. You can't come here and say life is terrible, life is shit, use the word shit without anything to compare to. How do you know that life is shit if you don't know how non-existence is like, ladies and gentlemen? We really do not understand this point. Now, before I move on, because I was just getting started. What can you say now? Go.
So the most important thing you said beyond the depressing debate was that life is about choices. Not glorifying life means you take more choices. I chose to believe in nothingness. That made me. By the way, you can choose to kill yourself. That's the key of the debate that no one has done.
Okay, let's compare their world and our world. Because in our world, happiness is not an end. They are portraying happiness as an end, ladies and gentlemen. However, happiness and suffering under both worlds are fluctuating experience across time. So sometimes you feel happy, sometimes you feel suffering, ladies and gentlemen. So the world is not really shit. You go through that suffering to understand happiness later. But why is the world a better place? Because if nothing changed under both sides, why is it better under our side? Because the glorification of life, ladies and gentlemen, the glorification of wanting to go out there and experience things and to want to help people, ladies and gentlemen, makes things better for people that are going through suffering. Because suffering happens to everyone. If I don't value life, life is cheap. I don't have the incentive to want to help someone that is going through depression or suffering, ladies and gentlemen, or give developmental aid and humanitarian aid to other people. Because why? They want to live in a boring world, a stale beer, ladies and gentlemen. That is what the world is going to look like under their side. There's nothing to care about. And because their world is going to be boring, I think that should be the reason why we shouldn't go with their world. Because it's boring, ladies and gentlemen, and this life is more interesting. Now, okay. Hold on a minute. A lot of people are talking about happiness like as if that is the end goal of this debate. What did anyone give me a yardstick to quantify happiness in today's debate, ladies and gentlemen? Some people don't live for happiness, Amrit. Some people live for fulfillment. The pursuit of happiness is such a Western ideal. And a lot of Asians don't live for happiness, ladies and gentlemen. They live for fulfillment. And to get fulfillment, to get happiness, ladies and gentlemen, you, in order to keep going, ladies and gentlemen, you need to value your life. Because if happiness and fulfillment is something that you seek, and if you are defeatist, how can you ever try to achieve that feeling, ladies? You are not keep going and trying to find that feeling because you are defeatist. You want to stay at home, smoke pot, don't care about the world. We think that's a terrible way of living. On the comparative, our side has a more interesting world. where we go out there and we try to live our lives properly, ladies and gentlemen. But before that, let's bring back the practice of taking 2 POIs. Yeah.
Okay. To live a life that has fulfilling meanings, when life inevitably ends up in death, when you're on a deathbed, nothing matters who's going to die alone.
That's life. You may be right, you may be wrong. That's suffering at that time. But when you are not approaching your death, when you are not on your deathbed, you experience happiness. You experience happiness because you wanted to live. You went on with life, not sit down on your couch, Amrit, and smoke pot and expect things to come to you, and that's apparently happiness. What is happiness? No one has told me in this debate. What is happiness? I am happy right now, ladies and gentlemen. And I will tell you why. Firstly, ladies and gentlemen, we think that there is a practical consequence that come off from our world, which they didn't want to talk about. We talked about how you will feel compassion. When you see a post of a friend saying something that she or he has gone through, you feel like you want to help that person. Help reduces suffering, ladies and gentlemen. If I didn't feel like I want to help someone, ladies and gentlemen, then that person will go through that suffering. Why is it on a net? What's the term now? Net zero. Net zero on a net, ladies and gentlemen, that our side is better. We want to help more people. We give development and humanitarian aid to people. When I see an old man fall, ladies and gentlemen, I want to pick because I want that old man because it's important to me to help someone because I treasure my life. How do I explain this, ladies and gentlemen? Because, okay, fine, they say that if there is a construct of life, all right, I will feel pain because there's pressure. We are leading to pain can come in so many ways. You want to talk about, okay, let's say in your best case scenario, you don't feel emotional or psychological down from the stairs, thinking in the world of non-existence, ladies and gentlemen, you still feel physical pain. Pain cannot be quantified, just like how we cannot quantify happiness. So on the net, they can't come out and win this debate by saying, if I don't feel bad or guilty about doing something, therefore we win because we feel happy, we can do whatever. Debates have to have a principle clash. And on the side of government, there were no practical consequences of what their world will look like. What are the benefits of living like that? What are the harms in our world, ladies and gentlemen? Okay, God harms in our world. Okay, and there were harms. There were 2 harms. Firstly, came from opening government. The opening government said that because the concept of life, I want to go and become Oprah and all that. No. There's no nexus between the and wanting to be Oprah. You will still want to be Oprah, ladies and gentlemen, because humans have instincts. Want to be classy, to thrive, ladies and gentlemen, and you can slowly see that I'm walking left ways and I'm leaving the stage. And because of that, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that I've made all your lives better. Thank you.